All right. Come on. Let's go. Come on. Here we are. I don't know what that music sounds like. I'd love to be able to hear it. You know what I got to do? I got to get headset, I think. Will I be able to hear the music, Mario?
You would.
Okay, let me do that then. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Come on in. Uh, I haven't done a press release, but I'm going to announce here today that I am officially a candidate for Congress in California's 12th congressional district. We started doing some fundraising today. We're doing some tweaks to our website, and it's early, but you got to get started early these days. So I'm in. I'm gonna go after this, and we have. Bear with me a second. Um, we've got a big challenge. I mean, Pelosi's a 30-year incumbent in a city that's not Republican by any stretch of anyone's imagination. But on the other hand, it's important that we take the fight to her and bring up ideas and issues that she refuses to address. And we are going to shame her in a way that hasn't been done before. In 2020, we had this top two system. So Pelosi was on the ballot versus a Bernie bro, a socialist, democratic social, self-described. And he talks in kind of activist speak, and talks to the Bernie crowd, reinforces that, which is his deal. But what he doesn't bring up is the other issues that really could embarrass Pelosi, like, for example, all the homeless on the streets in San Francisco, the unsafe nature of San Francisco now, waste, needles, all of that being discarded on our streets. And people say, well, listen, the congresswoman doesn't really have a lot of control over that. To which I say, the hell they don't. People don't realize that even though that the local folks, the local elected officials are the ones who are responsible for running the city, that the local congressman has enormous influence because they bring federal money to the city. And if the congressman or congresswoman isn't getting a response to his or her needs and requests and desires, then they can just not be that cooperative in terms of bringing federal money home to the city. Now everyone's like, oh well, that's suicidal, but yeah, if you have that kind of leverage and don't use it, then you're helping in the destruction of the city. So in any event, we're going to run a robust campaign against Pelosi. And this is it. We're going to do a press release today. You guys are the first to know. So thanks for joining in. And this report is we've been thinking about what it's about. I mean, it's always about my perspective on primarily national political events, current events, episodes, ideas. But in reality, ultimately, what it's been about for many years is the ongoing battle between Washington and the people. I mean, Donald Trump isn't exactly, a libertarian, although I think he's got really good libertarian instincts. I am a small L libertarian and a registered Republican and the chairman of the San Francisco Republican Party. And but one of the things I've realized is that whereas the left is really concerned about corporations gaining power and abusing that power, I'm far more concerned about government using and abusing power. And in fact, what happens is that if you get a very powerful government, you'll find that ultimately corporations use their power and their position to have those governments work on their behalf, as opposed to its original job, which is to protect the rights of all people equally. And that's what we see now. So what we have is what I refer to is the Washington agenda. So if the John Dennis report is about anything, it is about identifying, exposing, and fighting against the Washington agenda. The Washington agenda is typically the agenda where powerful self-interests use Washington for their advantage, for their gain, at your expense. And that is not the way the government was originally set up, certainly not this United States federal government. And it's something that we need to be vigilant about, because if not, we will get run over. I mean, look at what just happened recently. We had the great deplatforming 3-4 weeks ago on a Friday or many of you lost tons of followers. I lost like 10% of my followers in like a 3-hour period, 4-hour period, maybe a little less, like maybe 15% of my followers. Since then, I've lost fully a third of my followers on Twitter. Now, a third of Twitter followers didn't abandon the platform. So why is it that I'm losing my followers? And by the way, I'm not alone. I mean, everyone, on the right lost a third of their followers or so. And that was because the Democrats went to Twitter and identified people. Jack Dorsey, more or less, he said it. He certainly said it in regards to that in regards to the Parler situation, where Parler was deplatformed from Amazon Web Services at the request of elected Democrat officials. So, I mean, if this isn't the most important mission of our times in terms of politics, I don't know what is. Exposing the Washington agenda. And, people think that Washington doesn't have an agenda. Of course it does. Listen, I've said it in many different ways. Nancy Pelosi isn't the representative of San Francisco and Washington. She's the representative of Washington in San Francisco, sort of dictating down to us what's going to be coming out of Washington, D.C. That's a reversal of roles. And we can say it a million different ways, but it's evident that Washington is trying to drive us as opposed to us driving Washington. It's got to be exposed. That's what we're fighting for. That's why I run against Nancy Pelosi, and that's why I'm involved in politics here in San Francisco, is to push back on the abusive power of governments. It's our job, and government keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. And really, unless we push back on it, unless we find ways of reducing its size, then it's going to continue to dramatically and negatively impact our lives. There's an inverse relationship between your freedom and the size of government. The size of government, as government grows, you have fewer freedoms. It's that simple, and that's our mission, is really to push back about that, so that we can live freer lives, that we can live lives that are where our primary political value is liberty, the respective liberty of your neighbors, of other people, and other people respecting your liberty. That's the way that we can live together, and that's really what the goal of politics is for us to find ways of living with one another without killing each other. And the means to that is to respect each other's liberty. Government's supposed to protect that liberty. It does not. It gets its own agenda, and that's where problems arise. So we are pushing back on that. And that's the goal of my politics, and the focus and the mission of my politics, and that's the reason, like I said again, I'm running against Nancy Pelosi. So anyway, so here we are. So, I'm just wondering, where is Biden going from here that will make things better? I mean, when I saw Barack Obama for the first time, I was just like, wow, this guy's smooth. He's going to smooth his way into the presidency, because he was smooth and he had this presence about him and the way he handled himself, and people were like, God, we want a cool guy like him to be president. I kind of get that. Joe Biden's approach has been, I'm the empathetic president. I'm the nice guy president. And what we have so far in terms of policy is really, it's almost been caustic. People are like, wow, that was abrasive. All of these things, losing jobs in the, killing jobs in the Keystone pipeline, expanding immigration, even though he has said that, he said to my immigrants, okay, don't come right now. It's just not a good time. That his overall approach is to have a much more open immigration policy than Donald Trump did. They want to legalize what they're calling 11 million immigrants, illegal immigrants. Somehow find a path to citizenship for those people. That's a terrible thing. And by the way, just so you know, 11 million is not the number. There are way more than that. I have a cousin who I just spoke to. I haven't spoken to him in a few years. We talked about a month and a half ago, who wrote a very well-known study for Bear Stearns when there was a Bear Stearns. He was did a study about trying to really target how many illegal immigrants there were. And this is going back about 15 years ago. And in the study, he said he used oblique methods, indirect methods, to measure how many illegal immigrants that were in the United States. He looked at utility bills in areas where illegal immigrants tend to congregate, remittances to foreign countries, and through all these sort of indirect methods came up with a much larger number, closer to 25 million people. And again, this is 15 million years ago. I mean, so 15 years ago. So, you would think that the number is higher, even if there has been, a reverse immigration, people going back to Mexico, which, by the way, I don't believe for a second, or going back to other countries in Central and South America. The immigration policy, the immigrants, illegal immigrant number is much, much higher, and it's, like I said, probably closer to 25 million. That's who Joe Biden wants to make U.S. citizens, give the right to vote to. So, and presumably they'll become Democrats in short order, and that will alienate a ton of people. And I think he thinks, because he's a nice guy and he's empathetic, that he's going to be able to get away with destroying jobs. And how's that going to go? I have to tell you, look, I could be wrong about this, and I've been wrong about other things. Generally think that I'm right about my predictions, but this presidency is moving straight towards disaster, and I don't really see how it turns around. I mean, right now he's attacking jobs. He's doing nothing for free speech, and sort of hasn't really told anybody to knock off this whole business and all these conversations about chasing after Republicans or other people who supported Donald Trump. He's just let it slide and doesn't say a word about it, which means he's with the program. He likes this program. So here you have a president of the United States who's supposed to be standing up, he said, for the rights of all Americans, and he is, fighting. He's allowing the certain people to be deplatformed, not even pushing back on it a little bit. He voted for the Iraq War. He voted for Afghanistan, of course. He didn't do anything to stop Libya. He did nothing to stop the current covert war, supposedly covert war in Yemen. So he'll spend into oblivion. And that's because the premise of his presidency is completely wrong. It's all about advancing the quote unquote the Washington agenda. And so I got to tell you, I just feel like we are moving into a really difficult direction. And if illegal immigrants are given the right to vote, if they pass D.C. statehood and Puerto Rico statehood, if they pack the Supreme Court, they're basically just making a power move, and they don't care what opinion says anymore. They're just going to be in control, and you're going to have to take it. And this is very, very dangerous stuff. In the meantime, of course, what they're doing is they are moving forward on the impeachment trial of an ex-president. So I like this. This is very funny, because now it opens up all kinds of possibilities. If you're going to be able to impeach and hold trial over former presidents, why not do an impeachment of FDR? I mean, FDR, if you read, you can pull that up. Go ahead and pull that up there, Mario. What do we got here? I can't see those. Okay. We could do FDR. I mean, FDR's policies were a disaster, and actually extended the Depression. He did the Lend-Lease with, and that impounded the wardrobe, wanted us to get involved in World War II when the American public was against that. How about JFK? As I said this morning in a tweet, JFK defiled the sacrosanct White House through multiple affairs that included where he was sharing a mistress with a godfather of a major crime family out of Chicago. Should he be impeached? How about Truman? Truman put us into the Korean War based on a UN resolution. I mean, there was no declaration of war. He got people killed and created a very tense situation with which we deal to this day. I mean, doesn't that warrant taking a look at an impeachment? I mean, total and complete ineptitude and in violation of the Constitution, sending American boys to die. Jefferson, boy, we could go after Jefferson. I mean, Jefferson's one of my favorite of the founding fathers. In fact, he is my favorite. And what I like about Jefferson is that he was probably the most libertarian of all of the founding fathers. And but he owned slaves. So shouldn't he be impeached? How about Washington? Washington owned slaves. He fought the Revolution, helped us secede from England, set the tone of stepping down after two terms. But maybe we should go after him. Maybe not Andrew Jackson, Trail of Tears, bunch of other things. Could impeach him. How about Lincoln? How about Lincoln was so inept that he had to fight a civil war where 600,000 to 800,000 people died in order to get rid of slavery, whereas in other countries, every other country, developed country in the world at that time, managed to end slavery without going to war. I mean, he basically started a civil war. Does that not warrant impeachment? So in any event, I mean, the point is this whole impeachment business of a former president having a trial is just really ludicrous. It's divisive. It's against everything that apparently Joe Biden is for, and of course his cohort, his partner, his enabler in all of this disaster of a presidency will be Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi hated Donald Trump I'm trying to think. She heard the vitriol that she felt towards this guy, you could tell that her hate for him was visceral. I mean, Pelosi's always been a pain in the neck in terms of just doesn't want to even be friends with the people on the other side. I'm on my side, you're on your side, that's it. She's not friendly, that's that. But with Trump, she really hated Trump. I mean, she insulted him personally, said terrible things about him, and now she's got to be thrilled because he's gone, and they get to go after their agenda, and they're going to have the power to enact things in their agenda that nobody even can contemplate right now. So Pelosi will be along for the ride and basically continue to work to turn the United States into San Francisco. San Francisco has more billionaires per capita, at least pre-pandemic, and it's probably still true, than any place on earth. And yet we have more homeless per capita than any place in the United States. And we are the absolute picture of wealth inequality, something that supposedly the Democrats are fighting against. Well, that's what she's going to do for the rest of the country with this kind of power, without much opposition from the Republicans if they get their way, and with a president who's basically cognitively incapacitated. So I'm sorry. I'd like to have a positive message for you today, and I'd like to bring hope to our situation. And there is. I mean, listen. If there's any election where the Republicans can succeed, where the opposing party, i.e. in this case the Republicans, can succeed in the midterms, this is going to be it. The American people are going to speak out loudly and clearly, and push back on this, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm going to do my part by taking on Nancy Pelosi in probably the toughest congressional race in America. I don't think that's an overstatement. I think that's probably true. I think other people have said it in the past. Given her stature, given the registration in the district, it's the toughest race in America. But it's also a race that gives us an opportunity to expose, what her agenda is and what what Nancy Pelosi's vision for our future is, and offer an alternative to that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the fight to her, and I'm glad you're on for the ride. And thank you for joining us today. I would be so grateful if you could do a couple of things. I've been losing Twitter followers like crazy. I lost like 3,000 overnight, and then they added back 800. It was 2,000 or something like that. If you could follow me on Twitter, I'd be really grateful. That's Real John Dennis on Twitter, and it's the John Dennis Report on YouTube. That's the one that we're really, pushing right now. We want folks to join up on our YouTube channel, subscribe. Subscribe means click, and then you get notified whenever we put up one of these new videos. And we're going to be creating some other original content and going out on the streets and doing all kinds of fun stuff. So that channel will be great. John Dennis Report. Please subscribe on YouTube. And I will chat with you on Thursday. We'll see you then, and we'll have a whole bunch of new stuff to chat about, and hopefully have a little fun with it. So until then, have a great Tuesday and Wednesday, and I will see you on Thursday.